Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, my friends gathered here today. I stand before you with a story that is not wrapped in sugar or softened with poetry, but one carved from the rough edges of real life. It is a story about abandonment, about unexpected friendship, and about the strange, mysterious ways life teaches us lessons we never knew we needed. It is titled, "My son abandoned me in a village by a ruined house, but he had no idea who my neighbor was." Let me begin where the pain began. For most of my life, I believed I understood what it meant to raise a child. I believed that if you give love, you receive love. If you sacrifice, someone will remember your sacrifice. If you build a home, loyalty will grow like a tree within it. But life has a way of humbling the heart, of showing us that even the deepest roots can be cut, even the most trusted bonds can break. About a year ago, my son, my only child, drove me to a quiet rural village under the pretense of giving me rest. He said the city life was overwhelming for my age, that the noise was bad for my health, that fresh air would do me good. I believed him. I wanted to believe him. You see, when you are a parent, you don't easily accept the idea that your child might be pushing you away. You want to interpret everything as care, even when the truth is knocking at your door with cold knuckles. He left me by an old, ruined house at the edge of that village. The roof had caved in on one side. The windows were empty eye sockets. The door hung crooked like an old man leaning on a cane. I thought maybe he wanted to show me something, maybe he had a surprise planned. But when he placed my small bag on the dusty ground and avoided my eyes, I felt something in my chest tighten, something sharp and real. He said he needed to run a quick errand. He said he would return in a few hours. He didn't. One day passed. Then 2. Then 3. With every sunrise, hope thinned. With every sunset, heart brea. I never imagined that my life would take the turn it took the day my son drove me into that distant village. I remember the road clearly, long and winding, lined with dusty acacia trees whose branches swayed gently in the late afternoon breeze. I remember thinking that perhaps he was taking me to visit someone, or maybe he wanted me to see some land he had bought. He had been unusually quiet that morning, barely touching his breakfast, his eyes flickering between guilt and determination. A mother notices these things. Even when a child becomes a man, even when he grows beyond the age where he needs guidance, she can still read the unspoken lines on his face. But I didn't question him. I didn't want to add weight to whatever was troubling him. I had always believed that patience and silence were forms of love too. The village appeared slowly, emerging like a forgotten memory from behind the hills. Mud houses scattered unevenly, goats wandering lazily along the roadside, an old man seated under an acacia tree chewing something absent-mindedly. I remember thinking that the place was quiet, the kind of quiet that carried stories of its own. It was peaceful, yes, but also strangely lonely, as if the wind itself whispered the absence of people who once lived there. The car rolled forward, its tires crunching over gravel until my son suddenly slowed down, his hands tightening on the wheel. He cleared his throat once. Then again. As if searching for the courage to pronounce a sentence he had rehearsed but still feared. The car stopped in front of a ruined house. To call it a house feels generous. Time had chewed through its wood, the roof sagged like a tired old back, the windows stared out with the dead emptiness of abandoned eyes. It looked not only broken but forgotten, a structure resigned to its inevitable collapse. I turned to him, confusion settling into my chest like heavy stones. He didn't meet my gaze. He stepped out quickly, walked to the trunk, and pulled out. There are moments in life when a single choice, someone else's choice, not even your own, shatters everything you thought you understood about family, loyalty, and love. My son's choice to leave me in that quiet, forgotten village was one of those moments. It began with a drive that stretched longer than usual, a silence heavier than air, and a feeling in my chest that something was shifting, though I couldn't yet name it. The world around us blurred as we passed fields, old rusting fences, clusters of trees that seemed to whisper secrets I wasn't meant to hear. My son held the steering wheel with a grip too tight to be casual. He avoided my gaze, his eyes fixed on the road as though afraid that if he looked at me, he might reveal the truth too soon. I tried to speak, to break the silence, but every question felt like it might trespass into a space he clearly didn't want me entering. So I swallowed my words, choosing faith over suspicion, the way mothers often do when their hearts begin to sense danger but their minds aren't ready to confront it. The sun was beginning to set when the scenery changed. The city vanished behind us, replaced with farmlands dotted with houses that looked as though they had been built by hands that valued survival more than beauty. Dogs barked lazily, goats grazed without hurry, and here and there an elderly person sat outside their home watching the world pass by. When the car slowed near a broken house standing alone beside a field, a sinking feeling washed over me. The place looked abandoned, no curtains, no door that closed properly, no sign of life except for a small patch of grass stubbornly growing near a fallen beam. It wasn't the kind of place anyone visited. It was the kind of place people forgot. My son parked the car and stepped out without a word. He went to the trunk, pulled out my suitcase, and placed it gently on the ground. Too gently, almost ceremonially, as if he wanted the action to appear thoughtful even though Everett. The day my son drove me away from the life I had built for 72 years did not begin as a day of endings. It began like any other, with sunlight filtering through my bedroom window, casting gentle patterns across the floor. I woke early, brewed tea the way I liked it, strong, with a hint of ginger, and prepared myself for what I thought would be an ordinary family visit. My son had called the previous night, his voice tired but calm, telling me he wanted to take me somewhere peaceful for a few days. His exact words lingered oddly, "Mama, it's better for both of us." I didn't ask him what he meant. Maybe I should have. Maybe things would have been different. Or maybe they would have ended the same, just with different timing. He arrived late in the morning. He didn't sit down to talk. He didn't accept the tea I offered. He kept glancing at his watch, as though he was late for something urgent, something more pressing than time with his mother. Still, a small part of me clung to hope. We had drifted apart in recent years. He became swallowed by work, responsibilities, pressures I only learned fragments of through brief phone calls. I thought perhaps he wanted to reconnect. We drove in silence. Whenever I tried speaking, he responded with short answers, the kind that signaled he didn't want conversations deep enough to open old wounds. I could sense distance in the car, not measured in miles, but in the quiet tension that settled between us. I watched him out of the corner of my eye. He looked exhausted, his hair slightly unkempt, dark circles beneath his eyes. I felt worry begin to grow in my chest. Not for myself. For him. For what burden he carried so heavily that he couldn't look me in the eyes. The city disappeared behind us quicker than I expected. Soon the view outside shifted to endless fields scattered with grazing animals, dirt roads splitting into smaller paths, trees standing like silent witnesses to the passing time. The scenery reminded me of my CH. I had always believed that life followed a predictable rhythm. I woke up, prepared my meals, tended to my daily routines, and spent quiet moments reflecting on the past. My children, especially my son, were the constants in my world. They were not perfect, but they were mine, and I trusted that bond would never break. I was wrong. I was painfully, brutally wrong. It began with a call I received one morning. My son's voice on the other end was clipped, almost hesitant. "Mama, I want to take you somewhere," he said. There was an unusual tightness in his words, the kind that instantly signals that something is wrong, though it doesn't yet reveal how deep the problem runs. I agreed, thinking it was a spontaneous trip or perhaps a visit to some countryside retreat. Little did I know that those words were the prelude to a kind of abandonment I could never have imagined. The drive started innocuously. We drove past familiar streets, then the familiar cityscape slowly gave way to open fields, winding roads, and villages that seemed forgotten by time. My son was quiet, staring at the road as though it contained answers I could not see. His hands gripped the steering wheel firmly, almost aggressively, as though he needed to hold on to something, anything, to steady himself. I tried to make small conversation, commenting on the scenery, the smell of the wind, even the sun breaking through scattered clouds. But each attempt was met with minimal acknowledgement, a nod, a distracted smile, or sometimes nothing at all. When the car finally slowed, I noticed the first signs of desolation. A small village lay ahead, isolated, its roads cracked and uneven. Its houses were mostly made of mud or old stone, some with roofs caved in, windows missing, doors hanging on their hinges. The air smelled faintly of smoke and dry grass, with an undertone of loneliness that settled into the chest almost immediately. He parked beside a house that could barely be called habitable. It leaned to one